few months back, I found myself bored out of my mind and decided to explore the dark web. Yeah, I know it sounds like a bad idea right from the start, but I was curious. I'm just an average guy living a pretty normal life. I work a regular job and live in a small town. Nothing special. I've always been into puzzles and riddles. My grandpa got me into them when I was a kid. He'd always say, "The world is full of puzzles. You just have to find them." I never thought those words would lead me into the darkest, most terrifying experience of my life. One night, I was browsing forums on the dark web, looking for something interesting to do. I found this thread called "The Ultimate Puzzle, Enter If You Dare." It caught my eye. There were no comments or upvotes, just the title and a link. Curiosity got the best of me, and I clicked on it. The link took me to a page that was completely black, except for one line of white text: "Solve the puzzle and uncover the truth." Below that was a small box to enter answers. I love a good challenge, so I started working on the first puzzle. It was a simple cipher, and I solved it in a few minutes. But each puzzle after that got harder and harder. They involved complex math, historical references, all sorts of stuff. I became obsessed. I spent weeks on these puzzles. I barely slept, hardly ate, and stopped hanging out with friends and family. They noticed something was wrong, but I just told them I was stressed from work. In reality, I was getting deeper into this weird, dark world. Then I reached the final puzzle. It was insane. It needed knowledge of ancient languages, quantum physics, and cryptography. I spent every waking moment on it, feeling like I was on the verge of something huge. When I finally solved it, the screen went black for a moment, and then a message appeared. "Welcome to the truth." I got redirected to a new page with a bunch of encrypted files. My heart was racing as I decrypted them one by one. These were CIA documents, and they were about UFOs and aliens. It felt like I was in a movie, but this was real. One document stood out. It was about something called Project Allium. This was a top-secret operation to communicate with extraterrestrial beings. The details were terrifying. Experiments on humans and animals, psychological manipulation, and people disappearing without a trace. The more I read, the more I felt like I was in a nightmare. I knew I shouldn't be reading this stuff, but I couldn't stop. There were autopsy reports on alien bodies, photos of UFOs that had been recovered, and transcripts of conversations between high-ranking officials about the existence of aliens. Then, weird things started happening. My computer would turn on by itself at night, and I began getting anonymous emails with cryptic messages. My phone would ring, but there'd be only static on the other end. It felt like someone or something was watching me. One night, as I was reading through another set of documents, I heard a loud knock on my door. It was almost midnight, and I wasn't expecting anyone. My heart was pounding as I approached the door and looked through the peephole. No one was there. I opened the door cautiously and found a small, unmarked envelope on my doorstep. Inside was a single piece of paper with a message typed in red ink. "Stop what you're doing. You're in over your head." That's when I realized I had gone too far. I tried to delete the files, but my computer froze every time I tried. Panicking, I disconnected it from the internet and shut it down, hoping that would solve the problem. But the strange things didn't stop. If anything, they got worse. I started seeing shadows moving out of the corner of my eye, hearing whispers when I was alone, and feeling this overwhelming sense of dread that I couldn't shake. My friends and family kept asking what was wrong, but I couldn't tell them the truth. They'd think I was crazy. So after that warning message, I decided to lay low for a bit. I disconnected my computer from the internet and tried to go back to my normal routine, but I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was watching me. It was like I had opened a door that should have stayed shut. One night, I went out for a walk to clear my head. It was pretty quiet, the streets almost empty. As I turned the corner to my street, I noticed a black van parked a few houses down from mine. I'd seen it a few times before, but I always thought it was just a coincidence. Now, I wasn't so sure. When I got home, I checked all the locks on my doors and windows. I was starting to feel really paranoid. That night, I barely slept, jumping at every little noise. Around 3 a.m., I heard a soft thud outside my door. My heart was pounding as I grabbed a baseball bat and slowly opened the door. There was another envelope. My hands were shaking as I picked it up. Inside was a USB drive and a note that said, "You need to see this." I hesitated, but eventually plugged the drive into my offline computer. There were video files on it labeled by dates. The most recent one was from just 2 days ago. I clicked on the first video. It showed what looked like a lab. Men in lab coats were examining what seemed to be an alien body. They were talking quietly, but I could make out some of what they were saying. They were discussing the alien's anatomy, its possible origins, and what it meant for humans. The next video was even worse. It showed experiments being done on people. There were people strapped to tables, being subjected to strange devices and injections. The screams and pleas for help were horrifying. I felt sick to my stomach, but kept watching. The last video was the worst. It showed a meeting room with high-ranking officials talking about Project Alien. They discussed how they were controlling information, manipulating the public, and making sure the truth about aliens never got out. One of them even mentioned that anyone who got too close to the truth would be taken care of. I felt like I was going to throw up. I pulled the USB drive out of my computer and threw it across the room. My mind was racing. What had I gotten myself into? I wanted to believe it was a prank, but deep down, I knew it wasn't. The next few days were a blur. I was constantly looking over my shoulder, thinking someone was following me. The black van was outside my house more often. I tried to talk to my friends about it, but they just thought I was stressed out and paranoid. I couldn't blame them. It did sound crazy. Then, one evening, things took a turn for the worse. I was home alone, trying to relax with some TV. Suddenly, the power went out. My heart skipped a beat. I grabbed my phone and turned on the flashlight, making my way to the fuse box. Just as I was about to flip the switch, I heard footsteps behind me. I turned around, my phone's light shining on a man in a suit standing in the doorway. His face was blank. "You need to stop," he said in a calm, cold voice. "You're in over your head." I was frozen with fear. "Who are you?" I managed to ask. "That's not important," he replied. "What's important is that you stop what you're doing. Forget what you've seen for your own good." With that, he turned and left, disappearing into the dark. The power came back on a few seconds later, leaving me standing there shaking. I knew then that I couldn't just walk away from this. I had to find out the truth, no matter what. I started making plans. I backed up all the files I had and encrypted them. I documented everything that was happening to me. If something happened, I wanted there to be a record. I also reached out to a few trusted people, hinting that I might need their help soon. I don't know what's going to happen next, but I can't let this go. I need to uncover the truth, not just for me, but for everyone. This is bigger than I ever imagined, and I'm in too deep to back out now. After that guy showed up at my place and told me to stop, I couldn't just let it go. I needed to know more. I started going through the documents again, trying to piece together what was going on. That's when I came across something that really messed me up. One of the documents was called Human Contact. If you're wondering why aliens have never made contact with humans, you're asking the wrong question. According to this document, they did make contact, but we humans did what we do best. We hurt them for information. The document talked about several times when aliens reached out, but we captured them, tortured them, and did experiments on them. Reading that made me feel sick. It was like something out of a nightmare. There were reports of aliens trying to communicate peacefully, but we responded with violence. They came with knowledge and maybe even wanted to help us, but we just freaked out and attacked them. The document described horrible experiments done on these aliens. Scientists tried to get information from them in any way they could, often killing them in the process. It was brutal and inhumane. No wonder they stay away now. We showed them the worst side of humanity. And that's when it hit me. All those UFO sightings, the government cover-ups, the secrecy, it all made sense now. They weren't just hiding the fact that aliens exist, they were hiding what we've done to them. I knew I had to get this information out, but I also knew I had to be careful. These people were willing to do anything to keep their secrets. I started contacting journalists, conspiracy theorists, anyone who might listen, but no one took me seriously. They all thought I was just another nutjob with a crazy story. But this was real, and I had the documents to prove it. I started getting more threats, emails, phone calls, even strange cars following me. I knew I was getting close to something big. One night, I was at home going through more documents when I heard a noise outside. I looked out the window and saw men in black suits getting out of a car. My heart raced as I grabbed my laptop and the backup drives. I had to get out of there. I ran out the back door, jumped the fence, and took off down the alley. I could hear them behind me, but I didn't look back. I ran until I couldn't run anymore, finally ducking into an old abandoned building. I stayed there all night, my mind racing. I knew I couldn't go back home. It wasn't safe. The next morning, I made my way to a friend's house. I told him everything and showed him the documents. He believed me, but he was scared too. We decided to lay low for a while and figure out what to do next. That's where I am now, hiding out, trying to stay one step ahead of these people. I don't know what they'll do if they catch me, but I can't let them stop me. The world needs to know the truth, no matter how ugly it is. Maybe if enough people find out, we can change things. We can show the aliens that we're not all like that we can be better. I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back to my old life. This has changed me in ways I can't even describe. But I know I have to keep going. I owe it to those aliens, to the people who have suffered, and to everyone who deserves to know the truth. So that's my story. I know it's hard to believe, but every word of it is true. I'm just a regular guy who stumbled onto something huge. What? And now I'm in the fight of my life. I don't know how this will end, but I do know one thing. I'm not giving up. I hope you understand why I had to share this. Maybe together, we can make a difference. I'm kind of a tech geek, always messing around online, and sometimes I wander into the dark web. If you don't know, that's like a hidden part of the internet where a lot of sketchy stuff goes down. But I'm not into the illegal stuff. I just like reading weird theories and stories people post. One night, I found this thread called Antarctica, the Final Frontier. There weren't many posts, but the few that were there were enough to get me interested. People were talking about secret bases, ancient civilizations, and all that usual conspiracy stuff. But one post stood out. It was from this guy called Ice Seeker. His post was really detailed, filled with science talk and references to old research papers. He claimed that under the ice in Antarctica, there was something really old and powerful, something not from Earth. I usually don't buy into alien stuff, but the way he wrote it was really convincing. He mentioned weird magnetic anomalies, missing research teams, and even had photos of strange structures poking out of the ice. He linked to a bunch of documents and pictures on encrypted sites. I couldn't help myself. I had to know more, so I downloaded everything he linked to and spent hours going through it. There were satellite images showing odd shapes under the ice, reports from scientists who saw strange things, and even military transcripts talking about secret operations down there. The more I read, the more it felt like I was uncovering something huge. One night, while I was still reading, I got a message from Ice Seeker himself. He noticed I had downloaded the files and warned me to be careful. He said people who got too close to the truth tended to disappear. At first, I thought it was just part of the conspiracy vibe, but then he sent me something that freaked me out. It was a video file, really encrypted. It took me a while to unlock it, but when I did, I wished I hadn't. The video showed a group of researchers in some remote Antarctic outpost. They were whispering, clearly scared. They kept looking at the entrance like they expected something to burst in. One woman, with a thick Russian accent, kept saying, "We shouldn't have dug so deep." The camera turned to a hole in the ice surrounded by makeshift barriers. It looked like they had been digging for something. Then the video cut to a scene outside. The wind and snow were howling, and the cameraman was running, making the image shake. There were screams, faint but getting louder. He turned the camera back to the outpost, and I saw it. A massive dark figure moving in the storm, way too big and fast to be human. The video ended abruptly. I sat there in the dark, my heart pounding. I tried to convince myself it was a hoax, but the fear in their voices seemed too real. The desperation in their eyes wasn't something you could fake easily. I messaged IceSeeker asking for more info. He replied quickly, sending me some coordinates and telling me to check them against the satellite images I had. I did, and what I found was even creepier. The coordinates matched spots with weird anomalies, places where the ice had melted or where the snow was disturbed in precise patterns. For weeks, I was obsessed. I barely slept, always comparing notes, reading more documents, trying to piece it all together. I started noticing weird things. My internet would drop at strange times, my computer acted up, and I felt like someone was watching me. I saw unfamiliar cars parked near my house, and once I thought I saw someone standing in my yard, staring at my window. But when I went to check, no one was there. The paranoia was getting to me, but I couldn't stop. I had to know the truth. One night, I got another message from IceSeeker. He said he had to go dark for a while. Things were getting too dangerous. He told me to be careful, to trust no one, and that they were always watching. Before he signed off, he sent me one last file. It was a map showing a route through the Antarctic ice to what he called the Sword. I don't know what came over me, but I decided I had to see it for myself. I quit my job, used up my savings, and booked a flight to the southernmost point I could reach. I told my family I needed time away, that I was going on an adventure. They were worried, but they couldn't stop me. I was too far gone. As I boarded the plane, I couldn't shake the feeling I was making a huge mistake, but it was too late to turn back. I was on a mission to uncover a secret buried for thousands of years, and I had no idea what was waiting for me in the frozen wasteland of Antarctica. After I made it to Punta Arenas in Chile, I joined a tour group heading to Antarctica. I figured blending in with tourists would keep me under the radar. The flight over the Antarctic Peninsula was unreal. Just endless white as far as you could see. When we landed, I split off from the group and headed toward the coordinates IceSeeker gave me. It was risky, but I had all the gear I needed. Maps, a satellite phone, a portable heater, and a small tent. The first few days were brutal. The cold cut right through my clothes, but I pushed on. The landscape was just endless ice and occasional rocks. I checked my GPS every few minutes to make sure I was on the right path. On the third day, I found the first anomaly. It was a patch of ice that looked smoother than the rest, almost like it had melted and refrozen. I set up camp nearby and started digging. After hours of hard work, I uncovered a metal hatch. It was frozen shut, so I used my heater to thaw it. After a while, it finally opened. Inside, there was a ladder leading down into darkness. I hesitated, then climbed down. The air inside was surprisingly warm. My flashlight showed a narrow corridor with strange symbols and hieroglyphics. The walls were made of metal, but it felt different, almost organic. As I went deeper, I found rooms filled with machinery, all covered in dust and ice. It looked like no one had been there for ages. I took pictures and notes, trying to document everything. One room looked like a control center with screens and panels that were long dead. There were more symbols and what looked like a star map on one wall. Then I heard a faint humming noise from deeper inside. I followed the sound, my heart pounding. The corridor ended at a massive door. I pushed it open and stepped into a huge chamber. In the center was a glowing orb suspended in midair. It pulsed with a soft blue light, and the humming was louder. I approached the orb, feeling a strange static sensation on my skin. The light grew brighter as I got closer. Just as I was about to touch it, I was thrown backward by an invisible force. I hit the ground hard, my head spinning. When I came to, I was outside, lying in the snow. My gear was scattered, and the hatch was closed. My head was throbbing, and I had no idea how I got there. My phone and GPS were dead. Their batteries were completely drained. I gathered my things and made my way back to camp, shaken and confused. Over the next few days, I tried to make sense of what had happened. I checked my notes and pictures, but they were incomplete, like some of the information had been wiped. I knew I had to keep going to the next coordinates Iceseeker gave me. I needed more answers. The journey got tougher as the weather worsened. Blizzards slowed me down, and I had to take shelter often. But I kept going, determined to reach the next anomaly. After another week, I found what looked like a natural cave entrance. Inside, the air was warmer, and the walls had the same symbols. The cave led to more tunnels, and deeper inside, I found more machinery. This time, it looked like it had been used recently. There were footprints in the dust, and some of the equipment had been moved. I followed the tunnel until I reached another chamber. It was smaller, with more machinery and stasis pods. Most were empty, but one was still active, its lights blinking. I wiped the frost off the glass and saw a figure inside, humanoid, but not human. Its skin was pale and translucent, with large black eyes. It was alive, but in some kind of deep sleep. I took more pictures and notes, but was interrupted by footsteps echoing through the tunnel. I hid behind a machine, my heart racing. A group of people in military gear entered, talking in hushed tones. They mentioned securing the area and preparing for extraction. I stayed hidden until they left, then quickly made my way back to the surface. I had seen enough to know this was way beyond my understanding. I needed to get out and tell someone before it was too late. After what felt like an eternity, I finally reached the edge of civilization, or at least as close to it as you can get in Antarctica. I managed to find a research station. I was half frozen, completely exhausted, and probably looked like a madman, but they took me in. I kept my story simple. I said I got lost on a personal expedition. They didn't ask too many questions, thankfully. Once I had warmed up and gotten some food and rest, I found a moment to check my gear. My phone and GPS were still dead, but my camera had survived. The photos and notes I had taken were intact, giving me some proof of what I had seen. But I knew I couldn't share them with just anyone. This was bigger than anything I'd ever encountered. While at the research station, I tried to blend in and not draw too much attention. I spent a lot of time in their small library, going through whatever I could find about Antarctic expeditions and anomalies. Most of it was dry scientific stuff, but then I stumbled across something interesting. It was an old, dusty journal, half buried on a bottom shelf. The journal belonged to a scientist named Dr. Arthur Langford, who had led an expedition in the 1980s. His notes were detailed and meticulous, but towards the end, they got stranger. He wrote about discovering massive human-like footprints in the ice, far larger than any human could make. He mentioned hearing rumors from other researchers about giants that lived under the ice, stories passed down by indigenous peoples and early explorers. I couldn't believe what I was reading. Giants? It sounded like something out of a fairy tale, but given what I had already seen, I couldn't dismiss it outright. Dr. Langford's notes also talked about hidden chambers and tunnels, much like the ones I had found. He mentioned a large door with ancient symbols that he believed led to a giant's resting place. His last entry was a hurried scrawl about hearing strange noises and seeing large shadows moving in the storm. It seemed like Dr. Langford had stumbled onto something similar to what I had found, and he paid the price for it. There were no further entries, and there was no record of him after that expedition. It was like he had vanished into thin air. I knew I had to be careful. If the military or whoever was guarding these secrets found out what I knew, I could end up like Dr. Langford. I decided to leave the research station and head back home, but first, I needed to gather more information. Using the station's computer, I managed to access some restricted files about past Antarctic expeditions. It took some digging, but I found reports about missing teams, unexplained phenomena, and other oddities that matched what I had seen. There were references to Project Hyperborea, a top-secret military operation supposedly looking into ancient technologies and beings in Antarctica. One file stood out. It detailed an excavation that uncovered a massive, perfectly preserved body of what they called a giant. The creature was humanoid, around 12 feet tall, with advanced armor and weapons that seemed out of place for something so old. The report ended with a note about transferring the body and artifacts to a secure facility for further study. This was it, proof that there was something under the ice, something not from this world. Giants, ancient technology, aliens, it was all connected. But I was out of time. I had to get out of there and share what I had found before it was too late. I left the research station under the cover of night, heading for the nearest outpost with a communications link. It was a tough journey, but I made it. From there, I managed to send encrypted messages to a few trusted contacts, sharing my notes and photos. So after I got back home, things didn't really go back to normal. I always felt like someone was watching me. I'd go outside and feel eyes on me, even when no one was there. It was creepy, but I had to keep moving forward. I needed to understand what I had stumbled upon. One night, while going through the photos and notes once again, I got this weird email. It just said, "Meet me at the old library at midnight," with an address. I was freaked out, but also curious. I needed answers, and this could be my chance. I went to the old library on the edge of town. The place was falling apart and looked abandoned. Inside, there was a dim light. I saw a shadowy figure at the back of the room. My heart was pounding. "Who are you?" I asked, trying not to sound scared. "Call me Alex," he said. "I know what you've seen, and I know what you're looking for." He came into the light, and I saw a middle-aged guy with tired eyes. We sat down at a dusty table. "You found something that powerful people don't want the world to know about," he said. "The truth about what's under the ice in Antarctica is a secret that's been kept for a long time. Both the Russians and Americans found advanced stuff under the ice during the Cold War. They both sent secret teams to check it out. They found not just alien technology, but also signs of giants, real, huge beings. These giants aren't just legends," Alex said. "They were real, and their tech could change everything. The governments thought this info was too dangerous to share. They feared it would cause global chaos or a deadly race for power, so they kept it all secret, pretending it was just scientific research. Only a few top people knew the real story. They even spread false info to discredit any leaks or conspiracies." I asked Alex how he knew all this. He sighed and said, "I was part of one of those expeditions. I saw things that changed me forever. When I tried to talk about it, they came after me. I've been hiding ever since." He handed me a small encrypted drive. "This has everything I found, documents, photos, videos. It's dangerous, but the world needs to know. Share it carefully." I took the drive, my hands shaking. "Why are you helping me?" I asked. "Because someone helped me once," he said, "and because it's time for the truth to come out." I left the library feeling scared, but determined. I knew this info put me in more danger, but I couldn't ignore it. The world needed to know what was hidden under the ice. Over the next few days, I worked hard to decrypt the drive and go through the info. What I found was insane. Detailed reports from both Russian and American scientists, videos of the digs, and images of the giants and their tech. There were also secret talks between high-ranking officials about keeping all this under wraps. I reached out to a few trusted journalists and researchers, sharing the files with them. They were skeptical at first, but the sheer amount of info convinced them. We agreed to release everything at the same time so it couldn't be shut down easily. As the release day got closer, I noticed more strange things. Unmarked cars, weird calls, people following me. I knew the risk, but it was too late to stop. The truth had to come out. Finally, the day came. We released everything online, the documents, videos, photos. It went viral quickly. People were shocked, angry, and scared. The governments initially denied everything, but the evidence was too strong. They had to start addressing the public outcry. In the weeks that followed, there were many investigations and hearings. The world was finally learning about the secrets under the Antarctic ice. It wasn't just about the advanced tech or the giants. It was about how far those in power would go to keep control. As for me, I'm still paranoid, always looking over my shoulder. But I feel a bit of relief. The truth is out there now, and it's up to the world to decide what to do with it. I did my part, and now I can only hope it leads to a better understanding of our past and a more open future. So after we released everything online, a few people saw it. Not too many, but the people who did were shocked and freaking out. It seemed like the truth was finally out there, but that didn't last long. Within hours, the info started disappearing. Websites crashed, videos got taken down, and even social media posts vanished. It was clear that whoever was behind this had serious power. Next thing I knew, government agents showed up at my door. They didn't throw me in jail, but they put me on house arrest. They said it was for my protection, but it felt more like they were trying to shut me up. They cut off my internet, and I could only make a few phone calls. They told me not to talk to anyone about what I had found. It was obvious they wanted to control the story and keep everything hidden. Being stuck at home was torture. Every noise made me jump, and I couldn't shake the feeling that someone was always watching me. The paranoia I felt in Antarctica followed me home, and it was with me all the time. I know that by writing this, I'm taking a big risk, but I can't stay silent. People need to know what's really going on. The truth about what's under the ice in Antarctica affects all of us, and the lengths they go to keep it hidden are terrifying. They don't want you to know about the ancient technology or the giants. They don't want you to know that the secrets could change everything we know about our history and our place in the universe. They're afraid that this knowledge could cause chaos, but keeping it hidden is worse. I don't know what's going to happen to me. Maybe they'll come for me. Maybe they'll try to silence me for good. But I can't live with myself if I don't at least try to get the word out. Even if they take this down, even if they silence me, I hope someone else keeps searching for the truth. You have no idea what they are hiding from you. The world is full of secrets, and the truth is often stranger and more dangerous than we can imagine. Stay curious, stay vigilant, and never stop asking questions. This might be the last thing I get to share, but I hope it makes a difference. If you're reading this, please spread the word. The more people know, the harder it will be for them to keep it hidden. And maybe, just maybe, we can uncover the truth together. Stay safe and never stop looking for answers.